Well, good evening, and welcome to Wide Awake News. This is Gary Hendershot, and I am your host for the Alternative Energy Hour. Welcome. Hope everybody had a uneventful weekend. Here on the East Coast, where I live, we had a little excitement over the weekend. We had a major storm front fly through here, and we spent one day without grid power, which was an exciting thing. Of course, everybody's looking at me saying, well, gee, you're the big alternative energy nerd. How come you didn't have that covered? Well, the technologies are coming along, but right now there's very few that you can go out and, plop down your credit card and buy at the local Home Depot. So, some of the stuff we talk about here is a little bit cutting edge, and in the case of tonight's presentation, I think you're going to find it's more cutting edge than usual. Tonight, I have as my guest Mr. Sterling Allen, who's going to cover with us some of the more exotic free energy technologies that might be available at some point in the near future. A lot of it will have to do with how much demand there is for such items. In any case, Sterling, are you there? I believe I've got you all hooked up and ready.
I am, Gary. Appreciate you having me on your show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Sterling. I've got Sterling lined up to do this show with me at least once a month. The idea is, once a month, I'd like to get Sterling Allen in here and have him present, his top picks that he thinks are the most likely to become real in the near term. Sterling does publish a website, pesn.com. He also publishes pezwiki.com and freeenergynews.com. Did I leave any of your websites out, Sterling? I'm sure I left out a few. Maybe you'd like to give the folks an idea of where they can check out your material. I mean, you publish at a number of different venues. Maybe you give them an idea of what they can find at the various venues where you publish.
Yeah, the ones you just mentioned are good. freeenergynews.com is the easiest to remember, and is the same. It actually right now dumps you over to pezwiki.com homepage, where you can see the news and directory as it comes out. I want to explain to your audience, for those who might be listening for the first time, what we mean by exotic free energy and free energy in general, because I define it differently and everyone has a little different twist on it. For me, free energy is a very literal meaning that the energy itself is free for the taking. Solar is free, wind is free, geothermal is free. And of course, those are conventional free energy technologies. So to distinguish from the conventional to the unconventional, I call them exotic. Cold fusion, magnet motors, zero-point energy. Things that might give a college professor a coronary if you said it to them in a straight face. It's like, no, that's impossible. I don't want to hear any more. And la 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 la.
Now, you mentioned one item there, cold fusion. Now, we've followed a number of very interesting developments in what a lot of people refer to as cold fusion. And, of course, these days it's getting kind of hard to remember what we're supposed to call it, because, some people are calling it low-energy nuclear reactions. Other people have different names for it. But basically, as a genre, they seem to fit into this cold fusion scenario. At what point are we going to look at that and say, that's no longer exotic. That's well proven. Everybody's doing it. There's half a dozen manufacturers out there producing equipment. At what point would it transition from being an exotic free energy technology to being mainstream? Where would you draw the line?
It depends on where you are in the curve of breakthrough technologies. Are you on the bleeding edge, or are you on the tailing edge? If you're on the tailing edge, it might be 3 or 4 years from now before you finally wake up and go, hey, my house is powered by cold fusion. Duh, it really does work.
Well,
Or if you're on the bleeding edge, then you knew years ago that there have been thousands of replications of the effect, contrary to what you hear from the mainstream media, that it's never been replicated. That is a bold, bald-faced lie. There have been in the order of 17,000 replications of the cold fusion phenomena. And there are on the order of 6 to 8 companies that are bringing cold fusion devices to market right now. They're not there yet, but they're in process. So it is already well on its way to moving outside the realm of junk science, which is what it still is considered in academia, to being mainstream technology that is changing the entire energy industry.
so once it gets to that point, that I keep mentioning, where I can walk into Walmart or the local Home Depot, lay down my credit card, walk out with one, bring it home, turn it on, and produce energy. At that point, as far as you're concerned, it's a big yawn. It's no longer really exotic. That's now mainstream, and you're going to be moving off into the latest and greatest stuff.
But you know what's going to happen? That's about 2 years away before it's available at Walmart, because people like Walmart like to see it out in the industry for several months, selling well, good customer service, bugs worked out, problems resolved. That's when players like GM and GE and when the big players start getting interested. They want something that's tried and true and tested. It's way past beta testing. It's out in the field. It's been, in the marketplace, has been showing muscle. That's when it shows up at Walmart. So if you're going to wait to buy it at Walmart before you believe it's true, you're going to be 2 years away.
All right.
But what's going to happen is one of the things that's going to happen as these technologies go into the marketplace is that mainstream media and mainstream science is going to get even more of a black eye than they already have, as people realize that the mainstream media is nothing more than a whore for the mainstream establishment. They're prostitutes, as called by Gerald Celente, and that's a very apropos name.
Well, I didn't mean to eat up so much time on the on this one area. I know you've got a whole month's worth of innovative technologies that you want to try and cover in a fairly short period of time tonight. We unfortunately, unlike our Justin TV presentation, we have a pretty confined time frame that we have to get this out there. So maybe at this point, what we should really do is start moving into a discussion of those technologies that you think are on the list of the best, the cream of the crop of the various free energy technologies during the last 30 days. What do you think? Should we go ahead and engage in that conversation?
Sure, let's do that. And
please, I'll let you, frankly, I'll let you carry the load. I'll butt in and ask stupid questions as they come to mind. But you're the expert in this area, and I bring you in because I really want to pick your brains on what's going on.
The stupid question is the question not asked.
I hear that.
Right. Let me just tell your audience where they can go to kind of follow along, so to speak, with the top 5 free energy technologies, and that's top5energy.com. That's a shortcut domain name that will take you to our PezWiki page, where we list the top 5 and the runners-up. And what I'd like to do now, per your request, is to talk about the top 5 energy technologies, and just tell the audience that this is what we do on a weekly basis on your Smart Scarecrow show on Thursday nights. Is we do a This Week in Free Energy. This is a This Month in Free Energy version of that, where we go through the whole month of major developments, but on a weekly basis we go through the last week's developments and say, here's what's been going on. So with no further ado, the first thing in our list, I always like to give the LENR to Market Weekly, where LENR stands for, as you mentioned, Low Energy Nuclear Reactions. The more colloquial name for that is cold fusion. The idea is that because it's cold fusion, in contrast to the solar energy, where you have several hundreds of millions of degrees temperatures in order to get the fusion event to take place. Cold fusion means you're able to do it at relatively low temperatures, hence the name low energy nuclear reaction. Not that you get low energy out of it, but that it only takes a little bit to get it to go in the first place. And as you go to any one of these, you'll see a whole page full of, on the order of 30 stories from around the web worldwide in a given week on the subject of low energy nuclear reactions, of the different companies and the breakthroughs and the developments and the business breakthroughs that have been happening. And for June 28th, those included the ECAP from Italy, actually based out of Miami, are getting very high temperatures, 600 degrees Celsius, 20 units for 40 plus days continuous. And then Defcalion.
600 degrees. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but 600 degrees, that most people have kind of held 600 degree operating temperature out there as being sort of the minimum that would be required to produce hot enough and high enough volume of steam to maybe turn a steam turbine and produce electricity. Is that, is that interpretation accurate? Is that what we're looking at here? So right. At this point, this guy Rossi is claiming to have a cold fusion process that may actually, and it runs stable at 600 degrees centigrade and should be applicable to electricity generation with it. So this is really kind of a breakthrough, because prior to this, I think I've been hearing temperatures more in the neighborhood of, a couple hundred degrees.
Yeah. And also, we did another story just a couple of days ago. Hank Mills, my associate here at PESN, did a story titled The New Solid State ECAT, where he's saying that they're able to maintain that 600 degrees Celsius without any coolant, without any water, without any kind of fluid flowing through it to cool it down. They're able to get a steady, stable 600 degrees Celsius with no moving parts. You don't have to have any pump. Basically, you just have controllers that adjust. I'm not sure how they control it, but they're able to maintain that 600 degrees. So not only could you run a power plant, but you could even have these for your range at home, for your heating element on your stove. So that's a major, major development, that he's able to do it without the coolant. And so they're rocking and rolling there. And they're number one in our top 5 energy technologies. ECAT is. Defcalion's number 2. And we featured an interview with Defcalion in last week's news. And then there's a pending story that was actually in our review, but we actually posted that story on the company called, where are they? Scrolling through here. Nanospire. It's a company that's using what they call cavitation, and they're saying that the cavitation event could be related to and the cause of some of these cold fusion technologies where they're still not fully sure where the energy is coming from. And they have come up with an E equals MC squared type of equation to describe mathematically what is happening in the petri dish, so to speak, in the test tubes, in the laboratory. And they believe that cavitation will be to the 21st century what electricity was to the 20th century, where we are now to the point in cavitation in the last 50 years, having made enough strides in understanding it and using it not for its destructive purposes, but constructively. Compare that to electricity, where it used to be a lightning bolt would kill you, and that's about all they understood about it. Electricity, make your hair stand on end. get a little spark when you get some static electricity. That was the extent of electricity. They had no use of it. It was not powering anything. And yet, in the last century, it now powers everything. We're based on electricity, and he's saying that cavitation will be to the 21st century what electricity was to the 20th, and that it will be the new prime mover, will be used in things even elemental creation, where you take an element on the periodic chart that you want to create, and you can make it from water.
That would be interesting.
And this past week, he posted a story with talking about this equation that he's come up with. He's not disclosing the actual equation. He's keeping that confidential for now, but he gave some data from the results of the tests that they have run using that information.
Now that's Nanospire. Now, do we have any idea? I mean, have they made any announcements as to when they might have a gizmo available for sale?
They're talking 12 months. Conservatively, if they get proper funding, it could be sooner than that, as quick as 6 months. The problem with funding on these guys is that there's very few financial people who have the risk-taking acumen to be willing to jump out on a limb, so to speak, on something that is so new and revolutionary and has all the baggage of the label of junk science, etc. Notwithstanding all the progress that's being made in the industry, these people tend to go with the status quo. And so your money bag people are not really out there on the leading edge. So it's hard to find people of that ilk who are, but they exist, but not as much as mainstream technologies, and hence these technologies do tend to take longer than you would expect because the amount of support for them still languishes, but they do proceed. So we're coming up, does the break start when?
Probably a minute from now. We probably have about a minute.
Okay. And moving to the week before that, there's an inventor named Piantelli in the cold fusion sector who is seeking investment and moving closer to commercialization. And then we also featured a 1994 interview of Pons and Fleischmann on Good Morning America, which is excellent. Then moving the week before that, highlights from the LENR Weekly included an excellent article on the cold fusion field on oilprice.com. And then there's several stories on Capriteri's piezonuclear LENR. Yet another player in the LENR field is making great strides. A couple stories on NASA's involvement with LENR. They have been a very heavy player in this, trying to stay behind the scenes, but not doing a really good job because the word gets out that NASA is involved and interested.
Did I hear a rumor that NASA actually had a patent issued to them on some kind of an LENR gizmo?
Something along those lines.
I heard a rumor about it, but I wasn't able to actually, confirm that.
Yeah, I saw something on that. And then we also had a story about Mitch Schwartz at MIT, who has been doing a continuous run test on an LENR system since January, putting out 7 times at a minimum more energy than what it takes to run it. So it has an over-unity of 7 using cold fusion at MIT, which was the institution that blew the whistle, so to speak, in a negative way back in the days of Pons and Fleischmann, calling cold fusion junk science. So a little mixed bag there.
The worm turns, so to speak.
Yeah. And then finally, the week before that, we had, excuse me, that's when we first started talking about the 600 degrees Celsius ECAP. That was at the beginning of the month. So those things have been running, and we've been reporting on those since that time. And then, ironically, over in Italy, the Ministry of Education is trying to stop the needless, so to speak, LANR studies because it's making them look bad. So even as their country is being put on the map by Andrea Rossi, they don't want anything to do with it because they're going with the mainstream says it's junk science. So there's a lot of drama in this. It's like a horse race on steroids. And then on the 20th,
Whoops, there's the music. Folks, please do stand by until after the break. We'll be back probably in about, I think it takes about 8 minutes. Alrighty, and we are back from the break and all rested up. I don't know about you, Sterling, but I took a little nap while we had that break. Yeah, wake up! Actually, as I was on the website ordering one of everything that was advertised on this show, so we got to pay the bills, got to keep the bills paid, or we don't have a show. In any case, as we left for the break, give summary on a number of really hot technologies. Was there any other items that we needed to discuss before maybe we pick a few of those to look at in depth?
Yeah, I wanted to skim over a few more. Just wanted to first make the comment, one of the stories that Hank wrote this last week was cold fusion, the first domino, talking about how as cold fusion comes forward and people realize that it really is real, and that the mainstream science and media, as their lapdogs, have been poo-pooing it all this time, they're going to be royally pissed. And they're going to be saying, I want more. Is there more where this came from? And they're going to say, what else did you say was impossible that it really is possible? And they're going to basically abandon ship of the mainstream everything, and they're going to be going over in big time, in droves, to the alternative media. I see this as being part of what spells the death knell of the mainstream. People are going to realize that the mainstream is totally bogus and that there's all these kind of cool alternative things going on.
More and more, Sterling, I'm hearing that, where we are right now is really the mainstream media. I mean, according to a lot of the numbers, there are a number of alternative media programming choices that get more views than what is referred to as mainstream media. So in many respects, I think that transition has been going on for quite some time, and continues, of course. I think the problem we've got right now with alternative media is there are so darn many choices, and there seems to be clicks growing out of it where, if you listen to this guy here, you only buy into this stuff, and if you listen to that guy over there, you only buy into that stuff. And there seems to be some divide and conquer going on within the alternative media that we're going to have to find a way to get over. It's almost worse than the old NBC CBS wars, where if you were a Democrat, you listened to NBC, and if you were a Republican, you listened to CBS. We're almost getting into that level of disparity in the alternative media.
Yeah, people have yet to grow up in that regard. But just as a case in point, on the 6th of June, shortly after our last show, I posted an article called Why Doesn't Utah Media cover the latest cold fusion developments, pointing out that this whole cold fusion started in Utah. Actually, there were other people researching this, 35 years before Pons and Fleischmann, but that's when it went big time in terms of public awareness. And yet, Utah media has absolutely given the silent treatment to Andrea Rossi and all other players in this horse race that I talked about. They haven't given a single peep. I have various news feeds where I get email notifications whenever a story is published about cold fusion and the various key players. And not a peep out of Utah in the last year and a half since Andrea Rossi did his press conference back in January of 2011. So shame on Utah. It just shows you the disparity and how people are going to be pissed off when Utah is shown to be leading the nation in suppression of coverage of cool stuff. Let's talk about some other cool stuff. Another one of our top free energy technologies is what's known as a noble gas engine. If you look at the periodic chart over on the right-hand side there, those are called noble gases, helium and xenon, argon, etc.
Now, for those who don't know what a noble gas is, I mean, as I understand it, a noble gas is a gas that is absolutely inert and does not react with other things. Unlike oxygen, which will react with most anything. If oxygen reacts with iron, it turns into rust, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Noble gas typically do not react. Is that a clear explanation?
Right. And so saying a noble gas engine would be a bit of a disconnect for people, because like, how do you run an engine if the thing's not going to explode or have some kind of combustion? And the thing is, it's not a chemical reaction that's going on. It's nuclear, as from what we can tell. What happens is they have an electrical coil, almost like a Tesla coil, that goes around the cylinder. And as the piston goes through that, and as the elements go through that, and then it gets hit with a high-intensity arc, they have this reaction that goes on. It goes into plasma, not a chemical reaction. It's not a fire. It's not a flame. This plasma that created and pushes the piston, and you don't have gases going in and escaping, and you don't have the valves, because everything that you need for the reaction stays in the chamber. It's like a closed-loop system.
Okay, so it's not the suck, squeeze, pop, arrangement that we're accustomed to with a four-stroke engine.
Right. And this has been around since Joseph Papp, about 40 years ago, had the first one that was running. Killed a guy in one of the demonstrations. There was some tampering that went on, and anyway, he kind of took a lot of what he had to the grave with him. But there were several people, including the Roner brothers, 3 Roner brothers, who were involved with him. And 2 of the brothers are neck and neck, and I should say neck on neck. They're really brutal to each other in their competition with each other. One of them is Bob Roner, the other is John Roner. John Roner is with Intelligentry down in Vegas now, and Bob Roner is elsewhere. He's going to be speaking at the Tesla Tech Conference at the end of this month.
Where is the Tesla conference this time around, just in case some of the audience might want to look into that and see if maybe they could attend?
I would highly recommend it. If you only go to one conference all year, or the free energy ilk, you want to go to the Tesla Tech Conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Albuquerque, New Mexico. Okay.
Go to teslatech.info to get information.
Teslatech.info. Okay.
Yep, for that conference. I'm going to be the closing speaker, cleanup batter at that conference, talking about these top 5 technologies.
Well, I hope they load the bases for you.
And while Bob Roner is talking in that conference and supposedly giving a demonstration of this technology, his brother is going to be in Vegas showing licensees working devices and sending them home with one.
Cool.
That's what's supposed to be happening this month. So next week or next month when we do this show, we'll have to see if that actually happened. Don't want to build you up to too many of these exciting things and nothing happens. A guy complained to me by an email. He says, "I'm getting breakthrough fatigue."
Well, I think maybe the disclaimer is appropriate. Basically what we're doing here is we are reporting on news articles, some of which have been vetted, some of which have not. I mean, some of these things we really don't know for sure if the information that we're getting from these vendors is accurate. I mean, we take their word for it until proven otherwise. Is that a fair statement?
Yep. We don't have the budget of the mainstream news. We don't have all these deep-pocketed advertisers. We do have a small budget, but we can't travel around and send reporters out and pay thousands of dollars to do all the due diligence that would be required to do a really slam-up job. And that's one of the reasons mainstream media doesn't cover this stuff, is they don't want to do that. They're lazy. That's
well, yeah,
what's
most
expected
of them
of
are
them.
they're just taking whatever's on the AP wire and regurgitating that, and they trust AP to be giving them the straight skinny.
Yeah. And ironically, AP was actually at one of the cold fusion events I went to in October 2011 in Bologna, Italy, where Andrea Rossi demonstrated a 0.5 megawatt continuous running self-looped cold fusion system in a shipping container.
Now, you would have thought that that kind of a breakthrough demonstration with supposed mainstream media attendance, you would have thought that would have been on the nightly news and everybody would have heard about it.
He didn't say a peep.
Zip nada.
No.
So basically, what he did is he got a vacation in Italy, and whatever reporting he might have submitted never actually made it to average Joe.
And ironically, he seemed to me to be quite sympathetic to the whole story. He seemed to be on the believing end of the spectrum. And yet, when push came to shove, he didn't touch it. Yeah, we
and so it goes. So it's basically up to us to inform folks as to what's going on in this genre.
That's right. And it reminds me of the whole story of religion when, if you want something cool, you don't go to General Conference in the Mormon Church, you're going to get regurgitation there. If you want something cool, you go and dig outside, you go to Coast AM and other cool venues where you can really get into some juicy stuff.
Well, in any case, I didn't mean to get you off on a tangent. What other
I apologize to any of you in the audience who are LDS.
No, religion and politics are legal to discuss on any program where I'm involved. Because I'm an equal opportunity offender. I pretty much I offend everybody.
And one thing I find is when somebody gets outside the box on one topic, they tend to realize that, well, maybe what else was I missing out on? They realize that there's alternative everything, and that there's no such thing as just one thing that was out of kilter, so to speak. That everything is out of kilter, and there's alternative everything, and it's a lot more exciting out here. Another technology we talked about, another breakthrough this last month. A company out of Australia claims that they are going to be demonstrating an all-magnet motor called the Magen, M-A-G-E-N, in August. Probably mid-August at this point is the latest information on that. I saw some information from this group. They contacted me, didn't want me to give their website or names out yet. But they did give me a website where another technology they developed, an engine technology actually, really nice engineering on their, I mean, this is a serious company. This is not some, kid in his garage just tinkering. This is a serious company. He's got an all-magnet motor. So that ought to be interesting.
Now, Sterling, we've heard rumors of all-magnet motors so many times in the past, and we've been disappointed so many times. Should we really hold out much hope for this one actually being for real? I mean, again, it's that breakthrough fatigue. We've been there, done that. I mean, are we really going to take this guy seriously?
Well, the reason that I'm a believer in magnet motors is because my imagination can conceive of ways that this could be harnessing energy from a higher source, so to speak, from the environment. That you could be setting up a local disturbance in the magnetic field, that you get like a local vortex, a local tornado, so to speak, and you get an inrush of energy. And I mean, according to the definition of work, which requires movement, a magnet holding up a bunch of stuff on a fridge is doing no work. But I can tell you that if you try and stand there and hold that out at arm's length without doing any movement, that is not going to be easy.
And I'll tell you, I should probably warn you, looking at the time, we've probably got 5, maybe 6 minutes before they start playing the lead-out bumper to take us into commercials. So we've only got about 5 minutes here to do a wrap up on this. So
Okay.
you might want to think about an executive summary or whatever you had in mind as your hard hitting closer to leave the people thinking.
Okay. Back to the question about magnet motors. I have to tell you, in full disclosure, I'm still a magnet motor virgin. I've never seen a working magnet motor myself. I know people who claim to have seen one. I've talked to a lot of people who claim to have built one, but I've never seen one myself. But I think that's one you want to pay attention to. That could be, and like in any other industry, there are scam artists out there who try and play off of people's sentiments of wanting free energy, and so they'll come up with plans on the internet. You can buy plans for a Howard Johnson magnet motor. It turns out the plans aren't even for Howard Johnson motor. They're for something else, and it's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to power anything, let alone a house. But that's another subject. I do want to end on this point. 3 stories, the 3 bullet points from this last month. We had an interview with a guy named Raza. He goes by Raza out of India, who claims that there are several technologies coming forward that use a phenomena in which you basically, and I'm actually going to jump to the other story to get the wording on this. There's a researcher out of Los Alamos National Laboratory, New Mexico, Victor Klimov, has constructed a solar cell which can absorb the light of a specific wavelength in such a way that one photon can energize more than one electron. As soon as the electron absorbs a photon, it disappears for a very short moment into the quantum field. Being in the virtual state, the electron can borrow energy from the vacuum and thereafter appear again in our reality. Now the electron can energize up to 7 other electrons. And that's what Raza was talking about. This is out of mainstream science, okay? And this is a very interesting description of over unity from the mainstream science. And he's claiming that he and others are involved in bringing these technologies commercially into the market right now, that in the third world countries, under the radar, that they have been selling these things for quite some time now, not necessarily selling but getting them to the third world countries. And supposedly a company named Magnet Coaster, who's been claiming to have one of these for 4 years, is starting to fill back orders that uses this technology. I'm a skeptic on it because I'd like to see one working and get some additional validation. But I think that's a very interesting story, one to watch.
Cool.
And as always, go ahead.
I've just, that story about Raza, I looked at that and, I have my skepticism about some of this, new age stuff, and it just seems so new age to me. But, I'm willing to forgive the guy, his new age explanations on some of these things if he shows me a working device. I mean, a lot of my skepticism, would dissolve if I actually could see one doing useful work.
I actually had the opposite reaction when I interviewed him. I came on with skepticism of the New Age thing, thinking I was going to be getting a bunch of woo-woo stuff. In the first 20 minutes of our interview, he did nothing but cite mainstream journal articles from the mainstream science and explained this phenomena from the scientific literature. It was quite a surprise and shock to me. It's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that.
You were expecting for him to try to enforce upon you a religious conversion, and he actually came out with facts and figures. That's actually encouraging.
Yep. And I've got that interview, of course, published in our news as well.
I think websites. We should get those websites out there one more time before we close this show. Where can people go to find out more about what Sterling Allen is publishing about exotic free energy technology? Get those websites out there, Sterling.
FreeEnergyNews.com. FreeEnergyNews.com. And I should mention, I just today was invited to go on Coast to Coast on July 10th, Nikola Tesla's birthday, to talk for 3 hours about Nikola Tesla today.
3 hours. Now, are you going to be able to come up with enough material to fill 3 hours?
Yeah, I'll have a hard time whittling it down.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's an awful lot of good material on the cutting room floor to get this one down to a 40-minute presentation. I was aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, there have been 7 shows on Coast to Coast about Nikola Tesla, various ilks. I mean, different, Nikola Tesla this and that and the other. Nothing for the last couple of years, but I was just looking at the index page on their site. As you do a search for the term Tesla, they've done a lot of stuff on him. So basically, I'm going to try and remind them what they've already covered, and then talk about what are people doing today to implement this technology finally.
Okay, there's the music. That ends our presentation for the evening. I want to thank the audience for listening. Please stay tuned for Charlie McGrath. He'll have the second hour of the Wide Awake News presentation coming up right after the break. Thanks again, folks. You all have a good evening.